Fleet Commander Keston reviewed the intelligence report one final time before the Talvesh Armada's insertion into the Sol system. 47 capital ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, heavy cruisers, all equipped with the latest quantum refraction shields and reality displacement weapons that represented 3,000 years of continuous military development. And they were being sent to intimidate a species that defended its homeworld with railguns. Electromagnetic acceleration systems. His second officer, Telvanni, read from the technical assessment. They use massive capacitor banks to generate magnetic fields that propel tungsten projectiles down a linear acceleration corridor. Estimated muzzle velocity, 3% of lightspeed. Kinetic weapons, Keston said, unable to keep the amusement from his voice. They're throwing rocks at us. Very fast rocks, certainly, but still just chunks of metal propelled by magnetism. The report notes that their defensive shields are surprisingly robust, Telvanni offered. Conventional electromagnetic barriers, but heavily layered and drawing power from stellar collection arrays. Their shields don't concern me. Our quantum disruptors will tear through conventional electromagnetic barriers like they're not there. Keston gestured at the tactical display showing Earth's orbital defense network. What concerns me is how we're going to explain to the Hegemony Council that we needed 47 capital ships to convince a species armed with magnetic slingshots to accept mining rights negotiations. The Talvesh fleet had come to Sol not for conquest, but for a demonstration. Humanity had been offered membership in the hegemony with the standard terms: seed resource extraction, rights in exchange for protection and access to galactic markets. Earth's government had politely declined, stating they preferred to maintain sovereignty over their own system. The Hegemony Council had decided that a show of overwhelming force would help humanity reconsider. All ships report ready for system insertion, the navigation officer announced. Take us in, Keston ordered. Standard intimidation formation. I want those primitive defense platforms to see exactly what they're facing. The Talvesh Armada dropped out of FTL at the edge of Sol system. Their arrival heralded by the distinctive gravitational ripples of 47 massive vessels transitioning from faster-than-light to normal space. On Defense Station Armstrong, one of 12 orbital platforms protecting Earth, Commander Sarah Chen watched the alien fleet materialize on her displays and felt her stomach tighten despite 2 years of preparation for this exact scenario. Contact, her sensor officer reported unnecessarily. 47 capital ships. Classification matches Talvesh military signatures. They're holding position at the heliopause. Power status, Chen asked. Reactors at full output. Capacitor banks at 93% and charging. Main gun systems green across the board. Chen opened a channel to Earth Defense Command. Station Armstrong confirms hostile fleet arrival, requesting weapons-free authorization. Negative, Armstrong, came the reply. Hold position and maintain defensive posture. We're attempting diplomatic contact first. Of course they were, because Earth's government still hoped this could be resolved without firing the weapons that had cost $3 trillion and 12 years to build. Chen watched her tactical display as the Talvesh fleet began advancing into the system, their formation designed to project overwhelming power. Sophisticated shield matrices glowed in her sensors, quantum-level defenses that could bend reality itself to deflect incoming fire. They're really confident in those shields, her tactical officer observed. They should be, Chen replied. According to intelligence, Talvesh quantum refraction barriers have a 98% effectiveness rating against energy weapons. They've never lost a ship to hostile fire in over 300 engagements. Good thing we're not using energy weapons. Good thing, Chen agreed, her hand resting on the firing authorization panel. The diplomatic channel crackled to life with alien voices translated into English. Attention human vessels. This is Fleet Commander Keston of the Talvesh Armada. You are ordered to power down your defensive systems and prepare to receive hegemony negotiators. Compliance will be rewarded, resistance will be educational. The last word carried an undertone of amusement that made Chen's jaw clench. They think this is funny, her XO muttered. They think we're primitives playing with toys, Chen corrected. Let's see how long that lasts. The Talvesh fleet advanced deeper into Sol's system with shields at full power, their sensors painting detailed pictures of Earth's orbital defenses. 12 massive platforms, each one built around what the aliens recognized as electromagnetic acceleration systems, railguns, in human terminology. They're actually going to defend with kinetic weapons, Telvanni reported, genuine disbelief in her voice. Commander, our shields are calibrated to counter quantum disruption, plasma discharge, exotic particle beams, technologies that represent galactic standard military doctrine. These projectiles will be trivial to deflect. The estimate impact of their weapons against our shields, Keston ordered, more out of professional thoroughness than actual concern. The tactical AI ran the calculations, assuming optimal targeting and maximum projectile velocity. Negligible damage. Quantum refraction matrices are designed to interact with matter at the subatomic level. Any incoming projectile will be deflected into parallel dimensional space before physical contact occurs. So their weapons literally cannot hurt us. Correct, Commander. Their technology is approximately 3,000 years behind current defensive paradigms. Keston allowed himself a small smile. This would be the easiest demonstration of force in his career. Advance to optimal firing range. Prepare to disable their platforms with minimal force. I want them functional enough to witness their own obsolescence. The fleet closed to within 800,000 kilometers of Earth's orbital defense grid, well within range of the human railguns, according to intelligence estimates. Human vessels are powering up, sensors reported, detecting massive energy draw from their fusion reactors, capacitor banks showing charge buildup. They're going to fire, Telvanni said, her tone caught between anticipation and pity. Should we even bother with evasive protocols? Keston considered. On one hand, allowing the humans to fire would demonstrate the futility of resistance. On the other hand, there was something almost cruel about letting them waste ammunition on weapons that couldn't possibly work. Hold position, he decided. Let them see their best weapons fail. It will make the subsequent negotiations more realistic. On Defense Station Armstrong, Commander Chen received the authorization she'd been waiting for. Weapons free. All platforms authorized to engage. Copy that. Chen looked at her tactical officer. Solution on the flagship. Locked, range 792,000 kilometers. Projectile flight time, 88 seconds. Spin up the main gun. Let's show them what $3 trillion buys. The railgun mounted in Defense Station Armstrong's primary acceleration corridor was a kilometer long and drew power from a fusion reactor that could have supplied a city of 5 million. When its capacitors discharged, they dumped enough energy through the electromagnetic coils to generate a magnetic field that would have torn a lesser structure apart. The tungsten rod sitting in the breech, 3 meters long, 1 meter in diameter, weighing 7 tons, had cost approximately $800 to manufacture. Capacitors at full charge, the weapons officer reported. Firing solution locked, ready to fire on your order. Chen took a breath. 2 years of preparation, $3 trillion of infrastructure. 12 defense platforms built specifically for this moment. Fire. The electromagnetic coils activated in sequence, each one adding velocity to the tungsten rod as it accelerated down the kilometer-long barrel. In 0.3 seconds, the projectile went from stationary to 3% of lightspeed, 9,000 kilometers per second. The kinetic energy contained in 7 tons of tungsten moving at that velocity was measured in gigatons of TNT equivalent, roughly the same as a large nuclear weapon, except delivered with pinpoint precision instead of dispersed as thermal radiation. On the Talvesh flagship, sensors detected the launch immediately. Projectile incoming, tactical reported. Velocity, 3% lightspeed. Impact in 86 seconds. Activate shields, Keston ordered calmly. Full quantum refraction. Show them why kinetic weapons became obsolete. The flagship's shields engaged. Reality-bending matrices designed to deflect, absorb, or redirect any incoming attack. They could handle plasma moving at significant fractions of light speed. They could counter exotic particles that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. They represented the absolute pinnacle of defensive technology. They were designed to interact with electromagnetic radiation, quantum-level phenomena, and particle weapons. They were not designed for a 7-ton chunk of tungsten that was just there, moving really fast, obeying nothing more exotic than Newton's laws of motion. The tungsten rod hit the Talvesh flagship's shields and passed through them like they didn't exist. Because to a solid projectile traveling at relativistic speeds, they didn't. The rod entered the flagship's forward section, traveling at 9,000 kilometers per second. In the 0.8 seconds it took to traverse the ship's 720-meter length, the kinetic energy release was catastrophic. The initial impact vaporized the forward armor and everything behind it. Command stations, structural supports, living quarters, all converted to superheated plasma in a fraction of a second. The projectile's passage created a temporary cavity, as surrounding material was displaced faster than it could flow back. And the pressure wave from this displacement tore through the ship's internal structure like a shaped charge. The exit wound was exponentially larger than the entry point, as the shockwave reached the aft sections and decompressed explosively. Atmosphere vented, bulkheads shattered, entire decks peeled away from the ship's superstructure. The flagship didn't explode. It disintegrated, transitioning from functional warship to expanding debris cloud in less than a second. The tungsten rod, having lost minimal velocity passing through the relatively empty space of the ship's interior, continued on its trajectory and hit the dreadnought positioned 800 kilometers behind the flagship. Secondary impact. Same result. The dreadnought came apart, its sophisticated shields offering exactly zero protection against what was essentially a hypersonic bullet. Fleet Commander Keston had exactly 7 seconds of conscious awareness after the tungsten rod hit his ship. Long enough to feel the deck buckle beneath his feet. Long enough to see the forward viewscreen showing his fleet's formation shatter as his flagship died around him. Long enough to think one clear thought. What just happened? Then the shockwave reached the bridge and consciousness ceased. On Defense Station Armstrong, Commander Chen watched her targeting display update as the flagship transformed from solid contact to debris field. Direct hit, tactical confirmed. Flagship destroyed, projectile continued through. Secondary impact on trailing dreadnought, also destroyed. 2 ships, 1 shot. Chen's XO stared at the display. Jesus Christ. All platforms engage at will, Chen ordered into the fleet-wide channel. Fire for effect. 11 more railguns opened fire. On the Talvesh heavy cruiser Relentless Duty, acting Commander Velshara, suddenly and horrifically promoted when her fleet's flagship disintegrated, stared at her tactical display in absolute incomprehension. Report what happened to the flagship. Unknown, Commander. Sensors show the human projectile passed directly through our quantum refraction shields without interaction. Impact resulted in complete structural failure. That's impossible. Our shields deflect matter at the quantum level. Yes, Commander, but the projectile, the tactical officer's voice cracked. The projectile is just matter, solid matter. There's nothing for our shields to interact with. They're designed to counter energy weapons, exotic particles, quantum-level attacks. Not solid projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds. Velshara felt reality tilt beneath her feet. You're telling me 3,000 years of shield development is useless against rocks? against rocks moving at 3% of light speed and carrying gigaton-equivalent kinetic energy. Yes, Commander. Another railgun discharged. Another Talvesh ship died, torn apart by a weapon that shouldn't work, that was absurdly primitive, that violated every principle of modern warfare by being too simple to counter. Evasive maneuvers, Velshara screamed. Maximum acceleration, get us out of their firing solutions. But capital ships didn't dodge. They were designed to stand and fight, trusting their shields and armor to protect them while their weapons tore enemy vessels apart. Except their shields were useless and their armor, thin plating designed primarily for micrometeorite protection since shields handled everything else, might as well have been tissue paper. Fire all weapons, target their platforms. The Talvesh fleet opened fire with weapons that bent spacetime, that manipulated reality at the quantum level, that represented the pinnacle of galactic military technology. The weapons hit Defense Station Armstrong's shields, conventional electromagnetic barriers, multiple layers of them, drawing power from solar collection arrays and backed by the kind of brute force engineering that defined human problem solving. They held, because while humanity's offensive weapons were primitive, their defensive systems had been built specifically to counter the exotic energy weapons the galaxy favored. Earth's engineers had studied 50 years of galactic warfare records and noticed something important. Energy shields were really good at stopping energy weapons. The galactic military establishment had spent millennia in an arms race between exotic attacks and exotic defenses. Humanity looked at that arms race and asked a simple question: what if we just throw rocks really hard? Defense Station Armstrong fired again. A Talvesh carrier disintegrated, its shields offering no more protection than the flagships had. Velshara watched her fleet die and understood with perfect, horrible clarity. They'd lost before the battle even started. The Talvesh armada had come to Sol with weapons designed to counter weapons like themselves, and defenses designed to stop attacks they understood. Humanity had brought weapons so simple, so brutally fundamental, that 3,000 years of defensive evolution was completely irrelevant. "Charge FTL drives," she ordered, her voice hollow. "Prepare for emergency jump." Drives require 30 seconds to charge from standby. Then 30 seconds is what we have. All ships, evasive protocols, anything to make targeting difficult. Capital ships began desperate attempts to maneuver, their massive engines straining to add even fractional velocity changes that might throw off human targeting solutions. It didn't help much. The railguns fired every 4 seconds, slow by energy weapon standards, but adequate when each shot was guaranteed to completely destroy its target. The Talvesh fleet had the range advantage, but range meant nothing when your weapons couldn't penetrate enemy shields and their weapons ignored yours entirely. 23 ships made it to FTL jump, 24 didn't. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Hegemony Council emergency session subject: tactical assessment, Sol engagement. Velshara stood before the assembled council, her shame visible despite her attempts at professional composure, and delivered the report that would change galactic military doctrine forever. We lost 24 capital ships to weapons we dismissed as primitive. Our shields, our quantum refraction matrices that can bend reality itself, were completely useless. The human projectiles simply ignored them. "This is impossible," Council Member Thexville objected. "Kinetic weapons are inefficient. They require massive energy inputs for comparatively small yields." "They require massive energy inputs," Velshara agreed. "But Earth has a star's worth of energy to draw from. Their defense platforms are powered by solar collection arrays that can supply effectively unlimited power." She pulled up the tactical analysis. "We've been fighting ourselves for 3,000 years, developing sophisticated weapons to counter sophisticated defenses. We forgot that warfare's foundation is simple: apply sufficient force to destroy the enemy." Humanity never forgot. They just found a way to apply force that our entire defensive paradigm is blind to. Surely we can adapt, another council member argued. Develop shields that interact with kinetic projectiles. You're describing armor, Velshara interrupted. Physical plating designed to absorb kinetic impact. We removed most of our armor generations ago because shields could stop energy weapons more effectively with less mass. To stop a projectile carrying gigaton-equivalent kinetic energy, you would need armor so thick the ship couldn't move, and humans would simply build bigger railguns. She let that sink in. We cannot win an arms race against weapons that scale linearly with available energy, and Earth has a star to power their weapons. What do you recommend? The council leader asked quietly. We negotiate. We accept humanity's terms. We establish diplomatic relations, and we very carefully avoid giving them reason to aim their weapons at our worlds. This is capitulation to a species barely 2 centuries into spaceflight. This is acknowledgement that they found a strategic paradigm we're not equipped to counter. Velshara's voice was firm. They can kill our ships with impunity. Our weapons barely scratch their defenses. Continued hostilities mean definitive loss. We negotiate. The vote passed. The hegemony, dominant power for 2,000 years, would treat with Earth as equals. Because humanity had rediscovered something the galaxy forgot. Sophistication is worthless if the simple solution works better. Defense Station ARMSTRONG. After Action Report. Commander Chen filed her report with the quiet satisfaction of someone who'd spent 2 years preparing for exactly this outcome. Total rounds fired, 347. Confirmed hits, 312. Target destruction rate, 100% of successful hits. Enemy shields, ineffective against kinetic projectiles. Enemy weapons, effectively countered by conventional electromagnetic barriers. Assessment. Human railgun technology represents strategic counter